People don't realize that the reason why the Illuminati, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't just outright turn the world into a dystopian one world government is because that shit sucks. It's hard to maintain, boring, and stifles innovation, which would lead to its downfall. Kind of like Libya, where the populace got fed up with the lack of jobs. They got fed up with the fact that Gaddafi brings in foreigners to undermine and keep a middle class from emerging. And the high food costs were just pissing off them, the Tunisians, and all these other people in the Middle East. That's what's really causing these things, not the thirst for democracy. The West learned long ago it's far easier to let the pros feel like they have a say, kind of like kids who bargain with the parents, but in reality the parent just manipulates the kid into doing what the parent wants. You've been conditioned to act within a framework and see the world in a way that won't allow you to notice other options or the ability to create your own. One thing I do notice the elite doing, though, is manipulating the populace more and more into believing that everything they do is instinctual. Like I've said before, they slowly consolidate various traits into predictable mindsets. They're doing it with children, and they've done it on you. Those who see through it, and those who work around it, they're marginalized. They want a world similar to the Roman Empire, but with a more predictable populace. They don't have to worry about German hordes with axes anymore, so they know. And they know that lead poisoning will make them retarded, so they don't need to guard themselves like that. That's not a concern anymore. They control your minds, so they don't need to force your bodies to do anything. The system runs itself, and you people feed the machine with your very actions. For instance, take society in general, courting. When a man has sex with lots of women, he's hurting inside. He's broken and needs to heal. And they use the feminazis like bell hooks and other powers that be hell-bent on this mission to promote the illusion of a nuclear family, and that this is one of the bullshit ways to ensure pure happiness, which is really just conformity. The reality is that they want you to create more offspring that will work for money and die. And money represents labor. People constantly fall for this. Common sense would elucidate that the most romantic relationships don't last until death. Relationships change over time, people change over time, they can die. Or maybe the person just dies for whatever, you just die alone. There are many things that can happen. They promote this idea so much that people box themselves into holes, not to mention all the emasculation that's going on nowadays. I'm gonna get on that in another video. Most of these relationships, though, they're held together by financial obligation. Usually after the child's born, that becomes an obligation or a house. This is why so many relationships fail when people become financially independent. That's a true test. See, that's why money's sought after and considered the root of all evil, because it completely frees you. It allows people to be the assholes they really are without hiding behind a facade to maintain social support. They can leave you starving if you don't have it. See, true freedom comes from not... See, since money represents labor, if you have a bunch of money, you don't have to work. You can focus on what you want to do. That's how society was born. Surpluses of grain in the north, in the Middle East and whatnot. Surpluses of yams in Africa allowed people to say, I don't have to go into the forest. I've domesticated animals. I've domesticated crops. I don't have to worry about this season and that season. I have all this food. I'm going to focus on this and I'm going to focus on that. But now society is adjusting to a world where men and women will openly sleep with whomever they want without having to chain themselves to that one person and feel guilty about it. The ownership of sex is dying, and they see that and they have to adjust to it. This is why they're indoctrinating children to become decadent prudes. It reminds me of the scare tactic, the notion of dying alone. Anyone who's volunteered in a hospital or a nursing home knows. You can have all the friends in the world, but they will die, and so will you. And no one will care. You won't have any memories of it, just the knowledge that you don't remember, and the pain of having to live in that hard state. While some dirty Filipino steals your stuff, smelling like fish and sauce, capable of using P's and F's. In reality, the notion of commitment and romantic love is another aspect of the consumer industrial complex, where you must marry and reproduce. You aren't free, and there really is no true sense of happiness, just ignorance and illusion. The reality is that if you have no economic power, democracy is worthless and you'll be ignored by those in power, as I've been saying, because you're not their peers. You control no media, and no industries of any consequence. And since you refuse to take power, which is control of your life, with your own hands, you'll remain broken and weak, dependent on society for everything. And when they take it all away from you, you'll just end up in poverty on its bottom rung and turn to crime, or end up locked away from it like an animal, where you're sure to learn how the game really is and why it's like this. But by then, you'll be no different from one of Pavlov's dogs responding to a bell because you want to get out of there. In this society, you could stand up, speak on meaningless things like homo marriage, legalizing weed, having sex with kids, being a woman that can drive into sex in society, worshipping some silly type of god, or wearing a thong to the mall, and other assorted stupidity, but you can't question authority, not really. And if you do, when people actually start to listen, you'll be silenced. They'll systematically ignore you, frame you, assassinate your character, or they'll kill you outright and make it look like an accident. Don't fool yourself, Jack and Dandies. You aren't free. Wake up and know that there are many broke weaklings who like to fight for crumbs of the powerful minority. They'll take up arms and crush you, fueled by propaganda and the delusion that it'll pay off when they get their Toyota Camry and their shitty 2-bedroom house with the high interest rate mid-tier school for their kids. A weak, loose-knit majority formed into bands will be stamped out. Your time to fight has been lost. You're just able to inebriate yourselves with nonsense, time-wasting activities while feeding the beast before facing death's sweet release. Your only consolation is that you get to do what will happen anyway. Get your dick sucked, get your twat licked, bust a couple. That's about it. They're manipulating you to jump through hoops by having you all control what emotionalists want the most. You would contact sexual ejaculation, validation, mirroring, etc. People without it, and people withhold it. People without it, they flip out because they want it so bad, and they sometimes don't even know that's what they want. And others withhold it because of the indoctrination. Or they get it and realize it's not all it's cracked up to be and look for it over and over to try to find whatever it is they're supposed to find to make life better. Not able to figure out why there's still this void inside themselves. The most pathetic are those who get money for the wrong reasons and waste it on love or cheap sex, not really realizing that money, ownership, and networks are building blocks of power. And that power is what makes you equal. The elites respect those who respect themselves and learn not to navigate or play the system, but create their own system, their own way of thinking, and their own doing and creation of industry. That is a brainchild in their own image. This is how you achieve freedom. When you are partners with a bank, because your debt is great, you are powerful. Because you and the bank become allies. You don't owe the bank. The bank and you are stuck together. Because if you go down, they go down. When you have access to military sites in secret that hardcore Marines got their balls shot off to protect but can't penetrate because you invented some device or software that's vital to them, that's living. That is reality that opens the door to the world that you all think is a fantasy. But for you, this isn't to be. You'll just run through life looking for love or something to give your life meaning in a mundane world where you know something's not quite right. Deluding yourselves into thinking that life's enhanced by who you know and where you've been and other nonsense. And this is gonna be your consolation before dying. It'd be funny if it weren't so goddamn pathetic.